It's the 1st of March and I'm here in the west of Ireland in my greenhouse. Today we have a rain morning, so it's a real good time to be in here doing some jobs. Today I'm going to go through the technique or process of pricking out. Go through the process of the technique of pricking out, when you do it, what plants you do it with and what plants you shouldn't do it with. The process of pricking out is when a seedling germinates and it gets to its first leaves, its cotyledon leaves. You remove that seedling quite carefully with its leaves and root intact without any damage, and you pot it on or put it into a modular cell tray with new compost. This will give the seedling more room to grow. It'll have better ventilation around it. It'll have its own root space to develop into a strong plant. So when I'm sowing seeds that I know that I will prick out, I usually just scatter them into a small pot like that. So you can see they're quite dense. Now if I was to leave these grow on any longer, I'll get most likely dampening off. And what dampening off is, there's not enough ventilation, so as you see they're quite crowded, and then the stem will start to rot and then the plants will die off. So it's important now, I don't really leave these much longer, that I transfer them to their own individual cell where they can develop. So another reason the pricking out is quite good as well is this time of year raising seedlings, and with light levels, seedlings can get a small bit leggy. Now these are under lights, but it gives you a chance to kind of shorten that stem as well to create a stronger, more robust plant. When I prick this out, I can bury that stem a small bit, and that will give a stronger seedling. So you could say, why did you not just sow individual seeds into individual cells starting off? And I could do that, absolutely. But it depends on the type of crop that you are going sowing. So for example, today I'm pricking out brassica crops. So I have cauliflower here, broccoli, and I have summer cabbage. These are quite hungry crops, and these will not be transplanted out until April. So because of that, they're going to run out of nutrients quite fast with the potting compost. So I want really nice, strong, established plants going out when I plant them. So yes, I could sow them in individual cells. By the time I come to planting them out, they won't be as strong as if I had pricked them out after about 10 days and put them into their own individual cell. So it is giving it a week to 2 weeks extra nutrients as well. The way I could have done it as well is actually sown individual seeds in these cells as well. Let them grow and develop, and once they've developed a nice root system, I could take these out and pot them on to a larger pot such as this, or like a kind of smaller pot like that. I can do that. It's just easier when I'm sowing the seed. All I have to do is scatter the seed on top. I won't use all of these seedlings. There's quite a lot there. So I will take out the best, strongest looking seedlings and transfer them into the individual cells. Now just be a small bit careful of what you're transferring your seedling into. So going from this with a tiny seedling into the same size pot just on its own, just be careful there, because that is a lot of compost which can hold a lot of water. So just be careful, think of the size of the seedling and the size of the pot. So what you don't want happening is to transfer that seedling in, and then the dampening off then will occur because the compost is holding too much water. Now you can be very careful there with your watering, but I find it's easier to transfer it into a smaller cell like this that is not going to hold as much water around the seedling. It'll give it a good chance to fill that out, its root system, And then if you want to keep them a bit longer under cover, you can transfer them then into a bigger pot like that. So then what crops do you do this process with? So brassicas, which I'm doing today, so your cauliflower, your cabbage, your broccoli, your Brussels sprouts. These are quite kind of hungry plants as well, and they'll appreciate the extra nutrient potting mix that you'll give them after the pricking out stage. And that'll be enough, that should be enough until they get planted out. Tomatoes and peppers are definitely ones that need pricking out and potting on. And that's because it takes them quite some time from seed to transplanting. So they're quite slower. Peppers in particular being quite slow, tomatoes a bit more faster growing. So peppers could be, before they get planted out, could be 4 months from seed to transplanting out. Tomatoes a small bit shorter, 3.5 months before they get planted out into your greenhouse or polytunnel. And tomatoes in particular really appreciate it because their stem has the ability to produce roots quite easily. So you'll see the hairs on tomato seedlings, and you can bury that plant stem quite a bit and they will grow roots from that stem, producing a lot stronger plant. So with tomatoes, from the seedling stage, will get pricked out into like seed trays like that, and then once they develop a good root system in here, I would always pot them on further to a pot like this. They need that time to develop because they're quite slower than cool season crops, which would be your brassicas, and it gives them a good boost before they go into the summer. You see people doing it with flower seeds. They just scatter the seeds on, they pick out the best ones, and they'll prick them out into their own little pots. Also can do it with salad. Salad sometimes can be a bit harder to germinate because it needs light to germinate. And I see people doing that as well. I personally don't do it. But salad has a shorter period from seed sowing to transplanting. So we'll say in the height of summer, they might be only in their seed tray for the most 4 weeks before they get planted out. So there's more than enough nutrients in that compost to last them until they get transplanted out. Compared to my brassicas here, which got sown 8 days ago, and these will be potted on for another 5, 6, maybe 7 weeks. So they need that extra boost from the compost to get transferred. You can do it with any crops kind of in the onion family. So usually with my leeks, I would sow in a situation like that, and they'll be all clustered together. And once they reach a certain height and they're strong enough to handle, I would prick those out and put them into individual cells like that to give them more time to develop before I plant them out. And they don't mind that. You can do that with onions as well, particularly if you had sown onions in January, February from seed. They won't mind that process either. You can sow onion sets in trays as well and then transplant them out. So that's a group that seems to be okay with that as well. And then anything like your salady stuff, spinach, rocket, arugula, all that, they're quite fast growing. They're fine. Once you sow them in the tray, 4 or 5 weeks later, plant them out, and that's them. Now, what crops don't like this process, or you wouldn't prick out seedlings? That's mostly all root crops. So carrots and parsnips should be direct sown and not sown in trays before they're planted out. And that's where you get forked carrots, forked parsnips, is because they don't like root disturbance. So even sowing them in individually in trays, you shouldn't be doing that. That don't mind a bit of disturbance, that you can sow them in trays and then transplant them out. So we're looking at crops like radish, we have beetroot, we have turnips, we have Swedes. They don't mind the initial transplant, but I wouldn't be doing this process where I'd be pricking them out and push them a bit further in the seed trays. So root crops don't like their roots really to be disturbed. Another family of plants that don't like this, your legume crops. So that includes your peas and your bean crops. With peas and beans, I would just raise them in nice kind of deep seed tray, individual sowings here, and then they get transplanted out when they're ready, and there's no pricking out of those. So you're kind of looking at root crops and any crops that have a big seed, so that's your legumes. And then we have another kind of family or group of crops that are quite big seed as well, and they don't like to be messed with. You can plant them in trays and then transplant them out, but this pricking out process, they will not tolerate that. And that is crops like your cucumber, your squash, your melon, pumpkins, anything like that that has a big seed does not like that. So actually kale is a plant that falls under the Brassica family as well, and that's not something that I would be sowing like this and pricking out on a later stage. I just sow those in seed trays. Now you can sow them in clusters for smaller kale or individually for bigger plants, but about after 4 or 5 weeks I would just plant them out. I wouldn't try to be carrying them on further in seed trays or pots. The compost I'm using here is just a potting compost, and this would hold a lot more nutrients than, we'll say, a seed compost mix. It's also a bit coarser than a seed compost mix, so that means they'll have a bit more aeration in it, and it'll promote good root development. I'm pressing down the compost here just to make sure there isn't any big air pockets in it. These air pockets then would hold water, which would encourage that dampening off process. Give the seed tray a good watering before you start pricking them out, because if you start watering the seedlings after they go in, the water can really kind of hit them and maybe cause some damage. Now for the seedlings. So if you want to get a little bit of wire, stiff wire, a pencil or a little wooden dowel, and what you want to do is kind of lever up the soil, so the seedlings kind of pop up and are loosened with the soil. Then you're going to use that dibber or dowel to create a small hole, kind of as deep as you can. And using that dibber, just push the seedling down gently without damaging the root, and give it a kind of press on either side. Now these seedlings are very, very delicate. So you can see here I'm handling by the leaf only, never handle by the stem, because the stem is really, really delicate and it's really easy to bruise it and damage it. So these leaves are the cotyledon leaves, and after the next set of leaves after this will be called the true leaves. So the stem can be buried, and I could even push these down a small bit more, but these should get on fine. You can see there as well, I'll knock off, if a big clump of soil comes with the root, I'll just kind of knock it off, so there's none on it and it's going into fresh potting compost. So I have plenty of these seedlings, so I'm picking out the strongest seedlings there is. So nice big leaf, a nice strong stem, and kind of avoiding the really long leggy ones as well. Now if there's any signs of damage, do not prick it out. So you can see here I kind of damaged the stem. Now it's not fully broken off, but it's bent, and this most likely wouldn't survive. So here's another example of a seedling that I wouldn't prick out. I'm after breaking one of the leaves, so it's just left with one. So obviously this is not strong enough to carry forward. So that's a nice thing about pricking out as well. You're picking out the best seedlings to bring forward for planting. So that's it. That's them pricked out and in their own individual cells. Now I will bring this inside again, so we are the 1st of March. Still a small bit cool, but I just want to give these a bit of chance to settle in here and give them time to start sending new roots out. But because these are a cool season crop, I will give them maybe 2 weeks to start doing that, and then I'll move them out here because of space. And it's quite warm inside as well, but it's more so I'll have new seedlings inside. I have limited amount of space, So these will be the first to be kicked out of the house. What I want these seedlings to do is really fill out these cells, have their roots nice and white and covering the seed cell. If I'm not ready to plant them out at that stage, and I feel it'll be another couple of weeks or a few weeks, I will pot them onto a bigger pot, just so they don't get exhausted and run out of nutrients. Same technique, same process, no matter what crop you're pricking out. Just be very careful with the seedlings and don't pot anything on that you have broken or damaged.